They sent a bulldozer to my house. They thought they could get away with it. They were wrong. What the HOA did next will make your blood boil. The only thing they didn't know? I was wearing a badge. I still remember the sound first. Not the sight, the sound. It wasn't just metal. It was memory-crushing metal. A low rumble that didn't belong in a quiet neighborhood. I was 3 blocks away. Coming back from a night shift I'd barely survived, half asleep, half alive, just wanting a shower and maybe 2 hours of peace. But that sound cut through my exhaustion like a blade, and then the vibration hit through the steering wheel. Slow, steady. Wrong. The kind of vibration you feel in your teeth. And I knew instantly someone was tearing something apart. I had no idea it was my home. Funny how the world warns you, isn't it? Little signs you don't recognize until it's too late. The email from the HOA reminding me I was behind on fees I'd already paid. The president smiling a little too wide at the last meeting, as if she'd already won something I didn't know I was competing in. The way the neighbors stared. When I parked my patrol SUV in the driveway, half curiosity, half fear, half judgment. Yes, 3 halves. People get complicated when badges get involved, but none of those warning signs prepared me for the scene I saw rounding the corner. A bulldozer, a real, full-sized orange-painted monster rolling up onto my front lawn like it owned the place. 2 HOA board members standing beside it, clipboards in hand, faces smug enough to punch, and my house. The house my father built, the house I'd sworn I'd take care of. Already missing the porch railing, something in me froze. Not anger at first, not disbelief, it's just stillness. The kind of stillness officers get right before everything breaks loose. They didn't even hear my car pull up. They were too busy laughing. I stepped out slowly, not saying a word. I didn't need to. Panic started the moment one of them finally turned and saw me standing there with that look the look cops get when they're about 2 seconds away from turning a bad day into a worse one for someone else. But before the confrontation, before the shouting, before the moment everything tipped, let me take you back a bit, because nothing in this story is simple. A month earlier, the HOA president, Linda, or, as everyone in the neighborhood called her behind her back, Hurricane Linda, had decided she wanted my property. Plain and simple. Maybe because it was the largest lot on the block. Maybe because my house didn't look like the new cookie-cutter ones she was trying to force on everyone. Maybe because people like her think badges make the rest of the world bend around them and they hate it when someone else has one too. It started with letters, then fines, then warnings. All 4 violations that didn't exist. Grass too high. I cut it twice a week. Trash bin visible. I kept it in the garage. Exterior paint not approved. My home was grandfathered in before the HOA was even formed. Every step was harassment. Every step was calculated. But I let it go. I let it slide. Because I deal with worse on the streets every day. I know people like her. Small power. Big ego. Empty soul. But then she escalated. One night, she stood outside my home. Didn't knock. Didn't call. Just stood there, peering around like she was assessing it. I stepped out and asked what she was doing. She said, with that voice dripping fake politeness, "Just preparing documentation for necessary improvements." Your property is a community concern. I should have known right then. I should have been ready. But sometimes even cops don't see the danger until it's too late, especially when it's coming from someone who hides behind rules instead of guns. Back to the bulldozer. The first thing that hit me wasn't rage. It was the memory of my father standing on that porch 20 years ago, teaching me how to hammer the first board. The way he laughed when it splintered because I missed the nail. "Son," he said, "homes aren't built with perfect hands. They're built with stubborn hearts." That porch was the last thing he and I built together before I joined the academy. And was watching strangers tear it apart like it meant nothing. I walked toward them, every step heavier than the last. The bulldozer operator looked confused, not scared, not yet, just confused, like he'd expected the house to be empty.
Ow.
Maybe they told him it was abandoned. Maybe they lied to him like they lied to everyone else. Linda saw me and actually had the audacity to smile. "Oh good, you're here," she said. This will make things easier. We've declared the property in violation of structural. I didn't let her finish. What do you think you're doing? My voice came out. Calm. To calm. The kind of calm that hides a storm. She lifted her clipboard like it was a shield. You were given notices. Multiple. You refused to comply. The board voted unanimously for removal of unsafe structures. There is nothing unsafe about my house. That's your opinion, she said, shrugging. This is the community's decision. Stepped closer. Close enough that she finally had to look up at me. Close enough that the bulldozer operator cut the engine. Linda, I said softly, you are trespassing. You're destroying private property, and you're doing it under false authority. She smirked. We have the power to enforce. Compliance. I reached into my jacket slowly. Her eyes followed my hand. For the first time, doubt flickered. But I didn't pull out a weapon. I pulled out my badge. Her face drained of color so fast it was almost cinematic. You have the power, I said quietly, to follow the law. And right now, you're breaking every part of it. She opened her mouth to argue, but the words died somewhere between her ego and her fear. The bulldozer operator stepped down. Ma'am, I thought this was authorized. You told me stop, she snapped. We don't answer to him. Wrong sentence. Very wrong. You don't tell an officer you're above the law. Not unless you want handcuffs in your future. Took one step forward. She took one back. Linda, I said, did you sign an order to demolish my home? It wasn't just me, she said, voice trembling now. The board, did you sign it? Her jaw clenched. Yes. I nodded. Slowly. Good. Thank you. She blinked. What? You just admitted responsibility. A neighbor across the street who'd been pretending not to watch pulled out their phone. Another came outside. Another peeked through a curtain. The neighborhood loves HOA drama until they realize it might turn into real consequences. And that's when Linda snapped, You think you can intimidate me because you're a cop? She shouted, This community belongs to us. We decide what stands and what doesn't. She said that loud. Too loud. Loud enough that half the street now had their cameras out. I took a breath. Not the breath you take before shouting, the breath you take before ending something. Turn the bulldozer around, I said to the operator. Now he didn't hesitate. He started the engine and reversed off the lawn like he couldn't get away fast enough. Linda lunged toward him, grabbing the side of the machine. Don't you dare. This is HOA property. It's a legal order, no? I said, this is a crime scene. Her head whipped toward me. What? And that's when she really realized who she'd messed with. Not a neighbor. Not a passive homeowner. Not someone she could bully or fine or threaten with violation notices. A law enforcement officer watching her tear apart his home. Her face went pale. Her hands shook. Her legs wobbled the way guilt looks when it realizes. It's cornered. But here's the thing about people like Linda. They don't crumble. They don't apologize. They attack. Even when they shouldn't. She pointed at me with a trembling finger. You're abusing your authority. You can't arrest me for doing my job. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. Just watched her unravel. Your job, I said quietly, was never to destroy my home. Your job was to follow the law. Today you broke it. She stepped closer, but her voice cracked. I have the right to enforce community standards. You have the right to file paperwork, I said. You do not have the right to send heavy machinery to destroy someone's house. I had permission. From who? The board? And who gave the board the right to override property law? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. That silence right there was when she realized she'd crossed a line she couldn't walk back. I took out my phone, scrolled for the county property inspector's number, and hit call. Who are you calling? She asked. Someone who loves paperwork more than you. I said. The line rang once, twice. Then a voice answered. Inspector Graves. Graves, this is officer. I gave my name. I need you at my property immediately. An unauthorized demolition attempt is in progress by HOA personnel. There was a pause. Unauthorized what? Exactly. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I hung up and slipped the phone back into my pocket. Linda whispered this. Isn't fair. I looked at the splintered remains of my porch. This was never about fair. And for the first time, she knew she was in real trouble. But here's where the story twists, because I didn't know then what I know now. I didn't know just how deep this HOA corruption went. I didn't know what they'd forged, what they'd hidden, what they'd done to other homeowners before me, and I definitely didn't know the one thing that would flip this case upside down: the bulldozer, the fake violations, the harassment. All of it was just the beginning. If you're still here, keep watching until the end, because what happened next didn't just expose an HOA, it exposed an entire operation. The county inspector pulled up faster than I expected. His truck barely came to a full stop before he stepped out, gravel snapping under his boots. He carried a real clipboard, not the HOA kind full of ego and busy work, but the kind that meant authority, procedure, consequences. He didn't greet anyone, didn't shake hands. He walked straight past me and went to the smashed porch steps. He crouched, touched the splintered boards, and traced the bulldozer tracks carved across my lawn. The silence that followed was louder than shouting. Linda hurried after him, talking nonstop, her voice shaking but still dripping with fake confidence. He ignored notices. He ignored warnings. We had to enforce compliance. Every word was thin, weak, transparent. Graves saw it. The neighbors filming across the street saw it, but then everything shifted. Graves rose to his full height and looked directly at her. Not me, not the board members. Her. Like he recognized the pattern. Like he'd dealt with people like her before. Who authorized demolition of this property? He asked. Her throat bobbed. The board did. We voted last week. Show me the paperwork. I don't have it with me, she said. Why not? I didn't think I needed it. His voice hardened. Where's the paperwork, Linda? Her eyes darted toward the two board members standing behind her, silent, stiff, terrified to speak. They didn't want to be involved, but they already were. Then Graves asked the question that cracked the whole situation open. Did you file a demolition request with the county? Everything went still. She blinked rapidly. I thought ACHES could enforce not demolition, he snapped. Not without county permits, inspections, and approval, none of which you have. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a technical mistake. This wasn't ignorance. This was intentional. She wanted my house gone. She wanted it gone fast, before anyone could stop her. Graves turned to me. I didn't file a single document. Hell is demolition. Attempt is illegal. Relief hit me first, then anger, then something heavier. The weight of seeing my father's porch destroyed. The porch we built together. The last thing we ever built together. I felt like I had failed him. Even with a badge on my chest, Graves shifted his attention to the bulldozer operator. Sir, did the HOA tell you the property owner approved this work? The man nodded slowly. Yes, they said the homeowner was aware. He said the house was unsafe and had to be torn down immediately. His face fell as he realized he'd been used. I'm sorry, he said. If I knew this was a lie, I wouldn't have touched anything. I believed him. It's not your fault, I told him. They lied to you like they lied to everyone else. While the inspector took photos and notes, I noticed something across the street. A woman, maybe late 60s, standing on her porch with a walker beside her. Her eyes weren't curious or amused like the others watching. She was crying. Real tears. I walked over gently. She seemed startled at first, then relieved, like she'd been waiting for someone. Anyone to finally confront this HOA. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I'm so sorry they did this to you. I asked her if she was all right. She wiped her eyes. They did the same thing to my husband before he passed. Fines, threats, fake violations. They forced us to spend money we didn't have. We tried to fight it, but we didn't have a badge. Her voice broke on that last word. She wasn't just crying for my house. She was crying for every homeowner the HOA had crushed before me. And in that moment, something inside me clicked. This wasn't personal anymore. This wasn't just about my porch or my yard or my pride. This was bigger, much bigger. The HOA wasn't just corrupt. They were organized, strategic, targeted. This wasn't an isolated attack. This was a pattern. Graves walked over to me, lowering his voice. "Officer, we're going to need to file charges. Multiple. This is criminal fraud, property destruction, abuse of authority. And that's just the start." Linda overheard him and finally broke. "You can't do this," she yelled. "We have rights. We have authority. This neighborhood belongs to us." "No," Graves said. "It belongs to the homeowners, and you've been abusing them." Her board members stepped back, distancing themselves like she was radioactive. Then Graves stepped beside me.
Ow.
"I'll need to pull records from the HOA office. All of them. If they've done this to you, they've done it to others." And that was the moment I realized the truth. The bulldozer wasn't the real attack. It was the symptom. The disease was everything they had been doing behind closed doors. I stared at my broken porch, feeling anger burn deep in my chest. Not helplessness, purpose. If they had done this to me, if they had threatened that elderly woman, if they had been using their authority as a weapon, and I was going to show them what happens when they choose the wrong person to push. What happened next didn't just reveal corruption. It revealed something darker, something planned, something hidden in the HOA's own documents. The truth was still buried, but it was about to come out, and when it did, the entire neighborhood would never be the same. The neighborhood felt different after the inspector left. Not quieter, heavier. Like the air itself understood something had changed, something permanent, something that couldn't be undone. Linda stood alone on the sidewalk, pacing back and forth, talking to herself under her breath. Her board members had abandoned her the moment Graves brought up charges. They slipped away silently, pretending to check their phones, pretending they weren't part of the same machine that had rolled a bulldozer onto my property. She kept glancing at me like she was waiting for some miracle, some loophole, some last-minute rescue, but none was coming. Her world was cracking, and she knew it. I didn't go inside my house. I couldn't. Not yet. I wasn't ready to see the damage up close. The smell of crushed wood still hung in the air, the smell of my father's work. Broken open, like it meant nothing. Instead, I walked back to the elderly woman who had been crying earlier. She hadn't gone inside either. She was still standing on her porch, holding onto her railing as if letting go would make her collapse. I stepped closer. "Ma'am," I said softly, "can I ask your name?" "Evelyn," she whispered. "Most people just call me Eve." I said, "I'm sorry for what happened to you." "Ixt." She shook her head slowly. "No, son. I'm sorry for what they're doing to you now. If anyone deserved peace on this street, it was your father. On you. He was a good man." The mention of my father hit me harder than I expected. She noticed. "You look just like him," she said, "not in the face, in the way you stand." He had that same way of holding himself, like he was always prepared to catch someone if they fell. I nodded, swallowing back the lump in my throat. "He taught me that." She smiled sadly. He was the reason this street even came together back then, for the HOA. People forget. That, I leaned on the railing beside her. "What exactly did the HOA do to you?" She looked down at her trembling hands. "It started simple," she said. "Little fines, little warnings. They said our mailbox wasn't regulation. Height. Said the paint on our front door wasn't the approved shade of brown. My husband, Paul, he was a proud man. He didn't like being pushed around. I could see the pain rising in her eyes. But she kept going. They fined us $300 for a flower pot they said was too close to the walkway. Then $500 because our grass was patchy. Paul tried to fight it. He went to the board meetings, spoke up, demanded fairness. Her voice cracked. And then everything changed. "How?" I asked gently. "They started issuing new violations every week, then every few days. No. We spent thousands trying to keep up. Paint we didn't need, repairs we didn't need, fees we didn't owe. One day Paul collapsed in the living room, heart attack. The doctor said stress made it worse." She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. When I tried to explain what happened to the board, Linda told me, "Maybe if you two had listened earlier." it wouldn't have come to this. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. I'm sorry. I said, you didn't deserve that. No one does, she replied. But no one fights back. Not really. No one wants to be the next target. I looked across the street at my broken porch, at the bulldozer tracks cutting into the soil. Well, I said quietly, they picked the wrong target this time. Eve let out a shaky breath. I hope you make them pay for what they did. I nodded. I will. When I turned around, I found a small crowd gathering, neighbors pretending to water their lawns, sweep their driveways, get mail that wasn't there. They were watching everything. Every step, every word. And then something unexpected happened. One of them, a younger guy in his 20s, crossed the street and walked right up to me. Hey, he said, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. I've got something you might need. He handed me a USB drive. What's this? He asked. He looked over his shoulder like someone might be listening. I work at the property management office. I've seen things. The HOA records, they're not clean, man. There are files missing, altered, backdated, payments marked as unresolved even when homeowners sent proof. People complained, but Linda told us to handle it. Her words, not mine. I stared at him. Why are you giving this to me? He hesitated. Because you're the only one who can do something about it. And because what she did today was too far. Right. Before I could respond, he jogged back across the street and disappeared into his house. I looked down at the USB. This wasn't just evidence. It was a key. That's when my phone VIBR. ETED. It was Graves, officer. He said, I'm back at the county office pulling files. And I'll tell you right now, something's off. Records missing, dates modified, approvals that don't exist. I think this HOA has been operating outside legal boundaries for years. I walked toward my truck. What do you need from me? Come down here, he said. We need to review this together. Bring any documentation you have, especially anything showing their harassment started before today. I paused, looking back at my house. Graves, I said, someone just handed me a USB with internal files from the HOA office. He exhaled sharply. Bring it immediately. Hung up, pocketed the drive, and turned toward my home. For the first time since the bulldozer arrived, I stepped onto what was left of the porch. Boards cracked softly under my boots. Half a railing lay on the ground, snapped clean through. I traced my hand along the damage, imagining my father standing beside me, shaking his head in disbelief. This porch had held birthday parties, summer nights, winter storms, tough conversations, good memories. Now it held scars, but scars can become evidence. I took photos of everything. Close-ups, angled shots, wide shots. It's every splinter, every track, every broken screw. It's not just for the case for me, because this was personal now. As I walked back to my truck, Linda finally approached me. Her face was red, her hair frizzy with stress, her hand shaking. This isn't over, she said. No, I replied, it's not. You're making a mistake, she hissed. You don't understand how things work here. I said, opening my truck door. I understand perfectly. No, you don't. Her voice cracked. We have the right to manage this community. If everyone followed the rules, none of this would happen. I stared at her for a long moment. Who decides the rules, Linda? She blinked. The board. And who decides what's a violation? The board, and who benefits from the fines? I asked. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence told me everything. It's not about rules, I said. It's about control. She stepped closer. You think you can tear this place apart? You think you can? Expose us? The HOA is more powerful than you know. I smiled faintly. And I'm more patient than you think. Her eyes flickered with fear. Real fear. I got into my truck and started the engine. She stepped back as if the roar of it burned her. Before I pulled away, I looked at her one last time. You forgot? One thing, I said, I don't scare easy. Her jaw tightened. You'll regret this? No, I replied. You will. I drove away, leaving her standing in the street, small, cornered, powerless for the first time. On the way to the county office, my thoughts tangled like barbed wire. The USB, the missing records, Eve's story, Graves's reaction, the bulldozer, my father's porch. This wasn't a case anymore. It was a mission. When I arrived at the county building, Graves was waiting outside, holding a thick folder under his arm. "Good," he said, "because what I found inside, you're going to want to sit down for." He led me into a small office and locked the door behind us. "What you're about to see," he said, "is bigger than a demolition order. Bigger than fines. Bigger than harassment." He opened the folder. "This HOA has been siphoning money. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. They've been issuing fake fines to homeowners, then moving that money into administrative funds that don't exist. There are no receipts, no reports, no audits." I felt the anger rising like fire. "He wasn't done. In your house," he said, pointing to a document was listed as a planned community acquisition, meaning they intended to take your home for redevelopment. I froze. "What?" "They wanted your property," he said. "Badly. And you being a police officer made you a threat. They needed you out of the way." My blood ran cold. "And they were close," Graves added. "Too close." I handed him the USB. "See what's on this?" He plugged it in. Files popped up instantly. Financial logs, internal emails, falsified violation records, private messages between board members discussing targets. That was the word they used. Targets. My name was on the list, and not just once, 3 times. The note beside it read, "Shh, remove quickly." I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding. Graves turned to me. "You ready to bring this whole thing down?" I nodded slowly. "Good," he said, "because tomorrow morning we're going to pay the HOA office a visit." I leaned back in my chair, adrenaline coursing through me. They wanted to take my home. They wanted to take my father's legacy. They wanted to silence the neighborhood. They picked the wrong man. And tomorrow, the truth would hit them harder than any bulldozer ever could. The next morning, the sun hadn't even fully risen when I pulled up to the HOA office. My patrol car was unmarked, the badge tucked under my jacket, but I didn't need it to speak for me. Not today. Every step I took carried the weight of every homeowner they had ever wronged, every porch they had torn apart, every fine they had falsified. Graves was already outside, looking over the building with a slow, methodical gaze. "They think this is just another day," he said quietly. "They don't know we know. They don't know everything." I nodded, gripping the USB in my hand. Every file on there was a nail in their coffin. Emails, spreadsheets, bank transfers, falsified violation notices, all proof of what I had suspected. Systematic abuse of power. We approached the front doors together, Graves opening the first folder as we walked. "Watch this," he said. "These are emails between Linda and her board. They call homeowners targets. They assign levels high, medium, low, and plan actions accordingly. They knew who could fight back, who couldn't, who they could scare into submission." I felt my blood run hotter. They had done this to Eve, to countless others, and today, they were about to learn the wrong target was in their path. Graves motioned for me to follow. "They've already pulled the blinds," he said, "but there's a back entrance. Camera blind spots. You can get inside quietly." We approached the rear door. It was locked, but Graves had already taken care of that. A quick twist, a snap of the lock, and the door yielded. Inside, the office smelled of stale coffee and overconfidence. Paperwork littered the desks, unorganized chaos, the kind that made it easy to hide corruption, until someone like me walked in. I opened the USB on a laptop Graves had set up. Files scrolled faster than I could process. They had spreadsheets marking every homeowner's compliance, every fine, every attempt to coerce money or obedience. One folder was labeled Priority Targets. My name sat at the top. Next to it, annotations in red. "Remove quickly, officer." High risk. I let Graves take the lead, narrating what we found. "Look at this," he said, pointing to another file. "They've been forging signatures on violation notices, fabricating complaints from neighbors, making homeowners appear delinquent when they weren't. This is fraud on a massive scale." I could feel the tension building behind me. I knew the HOA would arrive any second, just as they always did when anyone stepped too close to uncovering their schemes. And sure enough, a few minutes later, headlights flicked outside the rear window. A delivery truck? No, 2 SUVs, black-tinted windows. Board members stepping out with coffee cups and smug expressions, oblivious to the storm about to descend. I glanced at Graves. "They don't know we're inside," I whispered. "They don't know we have everything." Graves nodded, keeping his voice low. "And we're going to make sure they understand the consequences." The first board member, a man named Charles, Linda's second-in-command, stepped into the office, stopping mid-step when he noticed the laptop screen. What are you doing in here?" His voice cracked. Not just surprise, fear? Something he hadn't expected. I stood up slowly. "I could ask you the same thing," I said. "This office is under investigation." Linda entered behind him, her face pale, but forced with defiance. "Officer, this is harassment," she spat. "You have no right." I cut her off. "I have every right to investigate a crime. And today, that crime is you and this entire board." Her jaw tightened. "You think a badge gives you the right to? To destroy our HOA?" I stepped closer. "I think it gives me the right to protect homeowners from predators like you. What you've been doing, this is bigger than fines. Bigger than violations. This is fraud, coercion, and abuse of authority." She shifted uncomfortably as Graves leaned over the laptop, flipping through files and showing her the evidence. "Look here," he said. "Emails to the board, internal messages, targeting homeowners intentionally, falsified fines, bank statements, forged signatures. All of it." Linda's shoulders slumped slightly. The defiance in her eyes flickered as the reality sank in. She realized, probably for the first time in years, that she could not intimidate her way out of this. She had spent years using fear and paperwork to control people. Now every piece of evidence was a hammer aimed at her. I took a deep breath. "Do you see now what happens when you cross the wrong person? You didn't just send a bulldozer to my house. You tried to send a message, but you forgot something. I have a badge, and I follow the law." Charles and the other board members shuffled nervously. We didn't know," Charles started. "You didn't care," I said. "Not for Eve, not for Paul, not for any of the homeowners who suffered because of your greed. You only cared about power." Linda finally spoke, voice shaking. "You think we can be prosecuted for this?" Graves didn't answer right away. He just let the silence sit, heavy and suffocating. Then slowly, "Yes, criminally, civilly. And when the homeowners find out what you've done, lawsuits will come. Penalties, jail time. The board will dissolve, and you will be personally responsible." Her eyes widened. Panic replaced defiance. She opened her mouth, but no words came. I stepped closer, letting the weight of every step carry decades of injustice. "And for the record," I said, "I don't forget. Every piece of property, every porch, every homeowner you thought you could break, it matters. And today, it ends." One of the younger board members, the one who had always kept his mouth shut, finally spoke up. We can fix this. We can make it right. We can." His voice faltered. He looked at me, almost pleading. I shook my head. "No, it's too late for that. This isn't a negotiation. This isn't a warning. This is accountability. Are going to answer for your actions." At that moment, the tension in the office was palpable. Linda was trembling. Charles looked ready to run. The younger members looked at each other like deer in headlights, and me. I felt a cold satisfaction, not of revenge, but of justice finally catching up with those who thought they were untouchable. Graves pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the district attorney. They need to be informed. Every file, every email, every piece of evidence will be handed over. This will not stop until every homeowner they harmed has closure." Linda's face went pale. You can't do that. We have rights. We own this office." "You own nothing," I said. "You control fear. You hide behind bylaws. But today, the truth owns you." Suddenly, a loud crash came from the other side of the office. The door had been forced open. 2 more HOA members had tried to intervene, but Graves and I moved faster. 1 step forward and they froze. Another, and they backed away. They realized, finally, that brute force would not save them from legal consequences. Not when we had every proof and every witness lined up against them. By the time the district attorney's office arrived, the HOA board was cornered, unable to escape the inevitable. We handed over the evidence, explained the harassment, the fraud, the falsification, the targeting of homeowners. The DA took notes, asked questions, and confirmed what I had known all along. This HOA wasn't just corrupt, it was criminal. Linda tried to bargain, tried to twist words, tried to gaslight the officials. It was pathetic. Every attempt crumbled against the weight of facts, emails, bank statements, photos of damage, and eyewitness testimony. Every lie unraveled in real time. Finally, Graves turned to me. "They're done," he said. "It's over. Every homeowner they've targeted will get restitution. The board will face criminal charges. You made sure of it." I felt exhaustion and relief collide in my chest. But there was no celebration, no pride, just the quiet knowledge that justice had been served. Not for me, not for the badge, but for every person who had suffered in silence. I stepped outside. Breathing in the morning air, smelling the mix of asphalt, grass, and the faint scent of coffee from the street cafes. Neighbors had started to peek out from their houses, murmuring, pointing, finally understanding what had happened. Some were relieved, some in awe, some angry they hadn't stood up sooner. Eve waved from her porch, tears in her eyes again, this time tears of relief. I gave her a nod, silent promise that no one else would be bullied in this neighborhood. The way they had been. Linda and her remaining board members were being escorted by law enforcement. Their faces pale, their arrogance evaporated. Their empire of fear had crumbled in ours faster than anyone could have imagined. And as I drove home past my damaged but standing house, I realized something profound. The porch, broken as it was, symbolized more than just destruction. Symbolized resilience, legacy, and the truth that could not be bulldozed, silenced, or erased. I opened the USB one last time, scanning the files that had changed everything. Names of people I had never met, neighbors I had never spoken to, all. Vindicated now because someone decided to act, to stand, to demand justice. I parked in front of my home, stepping onto the porch. I ran my hand along the splintered railing. My father's spirit felt near, not in wood, not in nails, but in the courage he had passed on to me. The house would be repaired, rebuilt, restored. But more than that, the neighborhood would heal, freed from the shadow of fear. And I knew, as I stood there in the morning sun, that some battles aren't about winning or losing. They're about standing up when no one else will, showing the world that, even against overwhelming power, integrity, courage, and justice can prevail. The HOA had tried to destroy me. It tried to destroy my legacy. It underestimated what it meant to fight back, to protect, to serve, not as a cop, but as a human being with a promise to keep. And today, they learned the hard way